Hey everyone, welcome into another webinar. Today we're going to be talking about 10 mistakes to avoid when applying for federal disability retirement. Today I'll have with me Sophie Rost. She's a senior federal disability case manager, along with Michelle Green, another one of our senior federal disability case managers. They handle lots of cases within our firm, and they know everything that the OPM is looking for with regards to an application. So they have all the tips to give you on what mistakes to avoid when applying. But before we get started, take a look at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and you'll see a little chat box. We have members here live right now answering any and all of your questions, so please feel free to write those in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as possible. Now, a quick disclaimer here. It's important to remember that this presentation is provided for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Here at Harris Federal, we strive to put out a bunch of content that can help educate federal employees just like you on all of your federal benefits. So now, let's get started. Take it away, Sophie and Michelle.
Hi, I'm Sophie Rost. I'm a senior federal disability case manager here at Harris Federal.
And I am Michelle Green. I am also a senior disability case manager here at Harris.
And today we're going to be talking about the mistakes to avoid when you're applying for disability retirement.
Yeah, so today we're going to cover the disability retirement process and what that looks like from beginning to end. We're going to talk about the benefit highlights. We're going to talk about specific mistakes to avoid. We're also going to discuss understanding reasonable accommodation in that process. We're going to discuss supportive documentation for your case, and we're going to talk about agency communication.
So we're going to talk about the process of federal disability retirement. Michelle, can you give us an overview of the benefit?
Absolutely. So federal disability retirement is actually already a part of the retirement that you pay into as a FERS employee. It is available to any federal employee who is disabled and has at least 18 months of creditable civilian service. So OPM, or the Office of Personnel Management, is actually the one who provides this benefit.
Some of the highlights of this benefit include a monthly annuity. It adds creditable years of service. It allows you to work in the private sector, and it can provide you with federal employee health and life insurance even after you've stopped working in your federal position.
And so a big question we often get is, how much can you receive on federal disability retirement? And the answer to that is, for the first year, you receive 60% of your high three. And every year after that, it is 40% of your high three. This is considered taxable income, but you do have the option also to keep your life or health insurance, and you do have the option to choose whether you would like to leave a surviving spousal benefit.
So what is the high three average salary? This is the average of your highest 36 consecutive months of basic pay. This will be calculated by the OPM, but you can reach out to your HR to request a benefits estimate or look at your adjusted basic pay on your SF50 to get an idea of about where that high three would be.
And just to recap, of your high three average, for the first year, you will receive 60%, and then every year after that will be 40%, all the way up until you turn 62, at which point it recalculates and becomes your regular retirement.
So once you have stopped working for the federal government and are receiving this disability retirement pay, you can also work in the private sector and make up to 80% of what your previous position's salary is making.
So many of our clients do go on to start new careers doing other things. As long as you are under that 80% income cap and you stay within your doctor's medical restrictions, you can supplement the income you will be receiving for your federal disability retirement with work in that private sector.
So once you're on disability retirement, you will continue to earn creditable years of service for your federal annuity for when it recalculates when you turn 62. So this is really important for that calculation and can significantly increase what your pension will look like when you are of normal retirement age.
Another really important consideration for many of our clients is their health insurance or their life insurance that they currently have through their agency. And so, as an approved annuitant for federal disability retirement, you do have the option to continue to receive those benefits. You can continue to receive your health and your life insurance benefits once you are approved.
So, what does the application process look like? Obviously, this is a question we get a lot. It is a long process to gather your documentation and apply for disability retirement and wait for that decision. So if you're working with our firm, we work on gathering the actual application forms, the medical evidence, and documentation from your agency to make sure your application is as strong as possible. With our firm, this can take between 30 to 90 days to get everything gathered and submitted to your agency. Once it is at your employing agency, they are reviewing the application for completion, making sure their portion of the documentation is completed, and they will complete the application and forward it to OPM for a decision. Once at OPM, your application will be assigned a CSA number to track your case and then be assigned to a medical specialist for a decision to be made. The medical specialist will review the application in full and may send out a request for additional documentation, especially if they want more recent records or need anything additional from your agency to make their decision.
Now that we've discussed a good overview of what to expect from the process in general, we're going to get into 10 mistakes to avoid when applying for federal disability retirement. So the first big mistake that we want to avoid is having no reasonable accommodation. So OPM actually requires this process in order to qualify for the benefit, and you have to have exhausted these efforts with your agency in order to qualify. So this is a process that you'll need to go through. If you work with our firm, your case manager will be there to help talk you through this process. But ultimately, OPM is looking to this process to see if your agency could provide accommodations that would allow you to perform your job or find another position that you would be able to perform.
The second mistake is if your application includes unclear prognosis or restrictions. So in order to be eligible for federal disability retirement, your condition must be expected to last for at least 12 months. Additionally, your doctor or medical provider should have clear restrictions that prevent you from fully performing your job duties. OPM can be really strict about wording when looking at a case, so make sure that the prognosis and restrictions are very clear and that it lines up with specific job duties that you're not able to perform.
A third mistake to avoid is an inconsistent date of disability. So when you are filling out your application for disability retirement, you have to decide what date you feel you became disabled from your position. This can be a very tricky date to choose because sometimes our clients will have conditions that maybe they've had for a very long time. And so settling on a specific date can feel tricky, but if you do work with our firm, your case manager will be there to help you choose that date. This is really the point when you feel that these medical conditions became disabling from your job, where you were no longer able to perform all of the essential duties of your position. And we like to try to find that date and to make sure it agrees with what your agency reports about your performance and attendance and conduct, and where your medical records become most supportive and indicate an exacerbation in symptoms or something that can show that this is when things changed and you were no longer able to perform your position.
The fourth mistake that people make is that they are not compliant with their recommended medical treatment. So it is important that if your doctor recommends a treatment plan or to follow up with certain specialists, that you do continue to follow these recommendations and do what you can to work on treating your medical condition. If you are not complying with your doctor's recommendations, it could appear that you are not working towards getting better or trying to get better, and OPM can take this as a good reason to deny you if they don't feel like that you're working towards improving your health. You are not required to follow through with treatments that could be considered extreme. So if there is an invasive surgery that you aren't comfortable with, or other treatment options like that could impact other aspects of your health greatly, OPM is a little bit more lenient on that type of treatment, or not following through with that sort of treatment.
A fifth mistake we would want to avoid when applying for federal disability retirement is submitting unsupportive documentation. So this is another one that can be a little bit tricky when I'm working with my clients, because sometimes we have to think about things a little bit backwards. We want to submit the documents that show that things aren't great at work and that you're not following through with all of the essential functions of your position and that sort of thing. And so on the other side of the coin, we don't want to submit positive performance reviews or decreasing VA disability ratings, poor conduct reviews, or unclear restrictions or notes from your doctor that could imply that perhaps you could recover soon. It's very important that every document that we submit to OPM does support your case. And so this is one that is very, very important. We do not want to provide them with documentation that might make them deny your claim.
Another mistake that we see a lot is not notifying your supervisors when you are struggling to perform your duties, or if you do have restrictions, and not letting them know. It's important to make sure that your employing agency is aware of your disability and struggles with your position. We do see a lot of clients that they have always been able to be successful in their job, and once they have medical conditions that are impacting their ability to work, they just keep it to themselves and just try and power through. But it is so important that your agency can note a deficiency in your service, because OPM absolutely looks for this. If they see documentation from the agency that shows that there is absolutely nothing wrong with your performance, then it can be more difficult to get an approval on that application.
Another mistake we want to avoid is filling out the forms incorrectly. And while this one might seem quite simple, it is actually very important. The forms required for the application can be very confusing and certainly overwhelming. There are many questions that require detailed and specific responses, and often agencies may not know how to complete the forms either. So one major benefit to having legal representation during this process is that we are familiar with every form and every question that may need answered, and we are here to help with that entire process. So definitely filling out the forms incorrectly might sound like a simple mistake that would be easy to avoid, but it is a very important one that can be overlooked.
Something related to that submission of your application forms is missing deadlines. This is huge, just because OPM can be so strict whenever there is a deadline for your application. For many of our clients, there is not a deadline to submit their retirement application. However, if you have been separated from your agency, if you're removed from your position, then you have 1 year from the effective date of separation to submit your disability retirement application to OPM. If you're working with us, it is so important to let your case manager know if you have been separated, just so we are fully aware of this deadline. Another deadline that you may come across and is more common is once the application is being reviewed at OPM, they will often request additional documentation and have a deadline to submit this documentation. It is important to continue treatment throughout this process, so that whenever OPM is reaching out for additional documentation, that we're able to acquire these medical records and supportive documentation and be able to get it to OPM for them to review and finalize their decision. The last deadline is when to appeal a decision. So if your initial application is denied, you have 30 days to appeal your decision. If you are not in contact with OPM within that 30 days, then you have missed out on your ability to to request a reconsideration appeal for the disability retirement application.
Along the same lines, talking about the timeline, a common discussion I have to have with most of my clients, once the application has been received by OPM, it can be very hard to wait because the wait is often very quiet. Unless you're receiving one of those requests that Sophie just mentioned, you will not hear anything from OPM at all. And so that can be very hard. We know that your lives are often hanging on this decision and waiting for that answer from OPM. But number 9 is very, very important, and we strongly recommend that you do not bug the OPM. We don't want you reaching out to them too many times to ask for updates or to ask where things are in the process. We have found that doing that really seems to have a negative impact on the outcome of cases. So during this time, it can be very quiet and very hard to wait, but in this process, you should be prepared for long periods of time where, at least from OPM, we're not getting any updates on your case. That is completely normal. So just as normal as it is to receive a request for more medical from OPM, it is also completely normal not to hear anything at all until we receive a decision. And though it can be really hard, we do recommend you refrain from reaching out to the OPM.
And finally, a huge mistake is not hiring legal representatives to work with you on your disability retirement application. Having a legal team to help you through this long and confusing application process can make a huge difference, not only on the outcome, but just with your mental health and confidence in your application. The case managers and attorneys at our firm are very familiar with the requirements that OPM has to approve these applications and what can help and hurt your case. In most cases, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars at stake, and you do not want to risk your livelihood and your future, especially when dealing with these disabling medical conditions.
That's exactly right, Sophie. This benefit can be life-changing, and we would not want you to risk that by going it alone and, stepping into some of these pitfalls that we often see. So here at Harris, everyone is a professional, and this is what we do all day. We have so much experience with this. Our success rate is actually 99%. We have over 8,000 happy clients, and we do have 100% money back promise. So if ultimately we are unable to get you approved, that is in place.
So to recap, federal disability retirement can be a life-changing benefit, but the application process is often long and overwhelming. It is so important to have the right medical documentation, maintain communication with your agencies and medical provider, and stay within all of OPM's strict deadlines.
That concludes our webinar for today. We are sure you probably still have questions. We do have team members live who will stay a little bit longer to answer as many of those questions as they can. If your question does not get answered, please feel free to call our office. You can schedule a free consultation. Someone will be more than happy to talk about your specific scenario and your situation, and we are always here to help. So please feel free to reach out if you don't get the answers you need in chat today.
So thanks for sitting down with me and chatting about this today, Michelle. I'm so glad we were able to provide this information to federal employees who are going through this process or considering going through this process.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here, Sophie.
And Elizabeth, back to you.
Thanks, Sophie and Michelle. You guys covered 10 extremely important mistakes to avoid when applying for federal disability retirement. Now, we don't want any of you to make those same mistakes, which is why we are here to help. You're able to give our office a call at any time and schedule a free consultation, and we can help guide you through this process from start to finish. Now, don't forget to check out our resource tab on our website to stay up to date on the new and upcoming content that we put out just for federal employees like you. Now, this might be the end of the webinar, but we will still have team members here live answering your questions. So please make sure to get those questions submitted and they'll answer those as soon as possible. And if we don't end up getting to your question in time, please give our office a call at any time and they can help answer your questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this webinar was able to help bring light into some of the mistakes that are made when applying for this disability retirement and help you learn how to avoid those mistakes and secure an approval. Make sure to keep an eye on your email later today, as you will be sent a replay of this webinar that you can watch at any time in case you have more questions or want a refresher on the mistakes to avoid. So thanks for joining us today, and we hope to see you on the next one.